Most people photograph confidence in the exact same way: chin up, shoulders back, big smile, teeth showing. And it's basically a pose borrowed from a stock photo of someone trying to sell you something. But I don't really think that's confidence. I think that's more of a performance confidence. And we've seen it so many times that we started confusing the two. So I want to tell you about the difference because real confidence actually looks very different on camera. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Marian. I am a photographer in Dallas, Fort Worth, and I photographed hundreds of women. And one of the things I've learned is that the loudest version of confidence is always not usually the most powerful one because real confidence is so much quieter. Think about someone who totally feels powerful when she walks into a room. She's not checking to see if anyone noticed her. She's not trying to convince anyone that she belongs there. She's not performing for the room. She's just occupying the space that she's in. And that is a completely different energy. It's also what I'm looking for when I'm photographing someone, because there is a huge difference between looking confident for a camera and actually feeling comfortable enough to stop performing for it. And you can see that difference in the photograph. When I'm shooting, especially boudoir specifically, I use a lot of low light and shadow. That's super intentional. Bright, even light shows you everything, but shadow doesn't. Shadow leaves something unanswered. It creates this tension and it gives your eyes somewhere to go. It allows parts of the image to exist without explaining themselves. And I really believe confidence works in the same way. You don't have to give everything away for someone to feel your presence. The same thing happens in expression. I'm not always looking for someone to stare directly into my camera and smile. Sometimes her eyes are closed. Sometimes she's looking past me. Sometimes she's looking down. Sometimes she's looking directly into the lens, but she's not giving anything to it. And those can be some of the strongest pictures because she's not asking the person looking at the photograph to approve of her. She is simply there. That same idea goes for posing. Now, obviously, I pose my clients. Most women aren't walking into my studio magically knowing what to do with their hands or where to put their legs or how even moving an inch can completely change the photograph. And that's something that I tell them before too. Like, you don't need to even know all those things. I'm going to show you. That's my job. I'm going to tell you how to pose. But there's a difference between directing someone's body and asking her to perform a pose. I don't want you frozen in some position because you think it's what a sexy or confident woman is supposed to look like. I want you to get into the right place and then let that settle into you. And there's a moment that happens when someone stops holding the pose and starts existing inside of it. That's usually when I take the picture. And almost every woman comes in with some idea of what she thinks she's supposed to do. She thinks she needs to know how to pose. She thinks she needs to know what face to make. She thinks she needs to be more confident before she books a boudoir session. Sometimes she'll tell me I'm awkward in pictures or I don't know how to be sexy, and that's good. I love that. You don't need to know any of those things because I'm not interested in photographing your impression of what sexy is supposed to look like. I'm more interested in what happens when you stop trying. And I've watched that shift happen hundreds of times. It's so exciting to me. At the beginning of a session, there's usually a bit of a performance. You know, there's a camera there, you're thinking about your stomach, how do my hands look, what's my face doing, blah, 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 blah. And most of my clients are wondering whether they look good. That's totally normal. I get it. I'm actually watching for it. It's very, very familiar to me. But then after a little while, something changes. You stop paying as much attention to the camera and you stop anticipating the photograph. Weird, right? All these things start to happen. You stop trying to make every second look good. And that's when things start to get interesting. And it's what I'm watching for the whole time. Because suddenly I'm photographing you instead of the version of you that you prepared for me. And those are very often the photographs that stop women during the reveal. When they look at those pictures and they're like, I can't believe that's me. And it's not necessarily the biggest smile or the most dramatic pose. It's often one of the darker photographs, one of the still ones, one where she's barely doing anything at all. And she'll just look at it for a few seconds. Sometimes she gets quiet. I've had a couple of tears. But most of all, she recognizes herself. Maybe she hasn't seen herself that way before ever. Maybe it's been so long since she's connected with that version of her. But I think that's what makes this kind of photography so interesting. We're surrounded by images constantly now. We know when a camera is pointed at us, we know what we're supposed to do. It's so normal. Smile, pose, turn slightly, all those things. Find your good side. But there's something different when you feel like you don't have to perform. We've all been practicing it since we were kids. So asking someone to stop performing for a camera can actually feel so much stranger than asking her to pose for one. But I think that's where the most interesting photographs live. Because power that constantly needs to announce itself doesn't feel nearly as powerful to me as someone who doesn't need an audience at all. There's something totally compelling about a woman who isn't asking the photograph to prove anything. She's not trying to look younger. She's not trying to look thinner. She's not trying to look like somebody she saw online. She's just allowing herself to be seen. And that's what I'm trying to do in my photographs. That's what I'm trying to do for every woman who walks in my door, every couple that comes in. It's not some perfect version of you. It's not the social media version. It's not who you think you're supposed to become before you're allowed to do something like this. It's you without all the extra noise. And that's also why the finished photograph matters so much to me. I don't want these images to become another 40 pictures sitting in your camera roll between screenshots and grocery lists, pictures of the kids. I don't know about you, but pictures of my dog and all my other pets. I don't think something like this should disappear underneath 1,000 other things in your feed. I want it printed. I want it in an album you can actually pick up. I want it on your wall that you can look at and be like, you see that? That's me. I want you to be able to come back to it years from now and remember exactly who you are when you made it. Because your relationship with that photograph might change. You might look at it 6 months later and know it's something different. You might look at it 10 years later and realize you had absolutely no idea how beautiful you were. And suddenly that photograph means something completely different. That's why I believe photographs like this deserve to exist somewhere other than a camera roll on your phone. It's not good enough. They're not content. They're not something for social media. They're evidence of a version of you that existed in that exact moment. And maybe that's what confidence actually looks like. It's not performing, it's not proving, it's not becoming somebody else. It's just being completely comfortable taking up the space that's already yours. And if you're curious about what that version of you looks like, send me a message, make a comment. I'll walk you through exactly how a session works, what the experience looks like from the first conversation through the finished artwork, and what we could create for you. Because you do not need to show up knowing how to look confident. That's kind of the whole point of this session.